Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Seed World Canada Retail Strategy webinar. My name is Mark Zinkowitz, and I am editor of Seed World Canada, and I am happy to be your host. Today's theme is soil health and why it should be a priority. We're going to hear from some experts who will talk about the intricacies surrounding soil health, why now is such a crucial time to talk about it, and how you can be an advocate for further continuing to improve the health of our soils. Now, before I begin, I would like to thank our webinar sponsors, 2020 Seed Labs and CCAN, for their support. If you have a question, feel free to type it into the YouTube chat box at any time. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a recording will be available in the next 48 hours as well. And like I say, we have four great speakers today. Again, if you have a question for any of them, please type it into the chat box at any time. I just wanted to start off by talking a bit about soil health and how it's not new. Soil health obviously is a topic that has been a concern for a long time. It's the reason many people have adopted no-till in recent years. Regenerative agriculture practices are becoming more prevalent in North America, like cover cropping. So this isn't a new discussion, obviously, but what is new are some recent scientific discoveries around soil health and some recent findings with regards to what needs to be done to make sure the health of the soil in Canada and North America is good and can sustain agriculture over the following decades. Along with these opportunities, of course, comes the need for good stewardship practices to protect the integrity and durability of soil, to support grower productivity and sustainability. Our four speakers today are Robert Black. He's a Canadian senator, and he's spearheading Canada's latest Senate soil study. Senators have heard from more than 60 witnesses, including farmers, scientists, agribusiness people, association leaders, Indigenous producers, environmentalists, and government officials who all have unique perspectives on the current state of soil health and how to improve it. Robert will give us an update on where things are at with this study. We'll also hear from Trevor Blua, disease diagnostician at 2020 Seed Labs. Trevor will talk about diseases of seed and how soil health is a crucial component of mitigating those. There you are, Trevor. How are you today? I think you're on mute still. I'll unmute you. There we go. How are you, sir?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing good, thanks. How are you doing today?
Good, good. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks
We
for having
also,
me on today.
yeah, well, and I feel like we just spoke the other day, which we actually did because we actually pre-recorded your talk because we weren't sure if you're going to be able to be on today. You are on today. I'm still going to play that pre-recorded talk that I did with you, but you're on live to take any questions that might come from the audience at the end. So thank you for being here,
Yep,
sir.
thank you.
We have Yamali Zavala from the Chinook Applied Research Association. How are you, Yamali?
I'm doing good, Mark. How are you? Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you for being on, for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. Now, Yamili, you've managed the Chinook Applied Research Association's Crop and Soil Program in Alberta, and you now manage the Soil Health Lab. Prior to joining the staff, you were a crop production consultant based out of Ottawa, where your project work took you to Central and South America, as well as points in the South and West of Africa. So welcome to you both, Yamali and Trevor. And last but not least, we'll hear from James White. He's professor in the Department of Plant Biology at Rutgers University, New Brunswick in New Jersey. His team has uncovered how plants harness microbes in soil to get nutrients, a process that could be exploited to boost crop growth, fight weeds, and slash the use of fertilizers and herbicides. So I'm going to start with Robert right now. We pre-recorded our chat the other day. It's about 9 minutes long. Robert is going to set the stage for us today and talk about the Senate soil study. So we'll hear from Robert now, and then we will hear from Yamali.
So the first soil study that was undertaken was completed in 1984. It's called Soil at Risk, Canada's Eroding Future, and Senator Herbert Sparrow completed it with the Ag Committee. Soil is one of Canada's most precious natural resources, and certainly soil conservation is the top of all our minds. Your members, those folks involved in the webinar, and everyone involved in agriculture and agri-food. From my perspective, the future of this country is intrinsically linked to the health of its ecosystems, and that hinges on soil health. It's important to look at the health of soils in Canada. 39 years has passed and lots has changed in the agriculture sector across this country, and it was time that we undertook another study.
Now, your study will highlight the vulnerability of soil to urbanization, pollution, climate change. I read on your website that, Canada's soils have really become very vulnerable over the last, number of decades. What, in your opinion, is the major reason for that? Why are we looking at this situation where our soils, in your opinion, have become degraded and are really under threat, and the health of them needs to be managed?
So I think a lot happened with the health of our soils after the 84 study. And, farmers and organizations and provinces undertook some things, and times have changed. Urbanization, Toronto, I think of the GTA has grown, and now much of the land around the city is certainly owned by developers and maybe rented by farmers, which means that they're probably not going to put the time and effort into protecting those soils when they don't know whether they'll have it next year or in 5 years' time, right? So things have changed over the last 39 years, but certainly urbanization, pollution, as you've talked about, climate change. We didn't talk about or carbon sequestration back in 1984, or very little, right? So times have changed, and that's and as well, I think some of the baseline studies that were done in those early years have shown that maybe things aren't as rosy in some places with respect to soil matter, carbon in the soil, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the conversation really has changed over the last 40 years. We weren't having this climate change conversation that we're having now 4 decades ago. I would like to give people some strategies they can use to really be good soil health advocates. Are there any collaborative efforts or partnerships that you believe should be encouraged among our industry's stakeholders, between them, government agencies, and researchers, based on your findings so far? How can people in our industry really be proactive in this?
We have heard time and again that data sharing is not what it should be. Their academics are working and they're doing good stuff in their zone, and researchers are doing good stuff, and seed researchers and growers are doing good stuff, but there's not a lot of data sharing. And so there's not a repository where all this information can or should go. So I expect there'll be some sort of a recommendation or recommendations that might center around data, and your folks, your members, will be part of it, should, and will be, I hope, will be part of that data sharing. Certainly focusing on research and development and seeds that are high yielding, work well in certain soil conditions, and also contribute to carbon sequestration as well. The whole idea of cover crops, we weren't talking about that back or very little in the 80s. We were talking about summer fallowing, and heck, we don't do that anymore, right? So times, as you said, have changed, and it's important that we all work together. You talk about collaborations, and the fact that this is a report that will be directed at the federal government. That's what the Senate reports do. They are directed at the federal government. But I would expect that it might be the report might be of interest to provincial governments and municipal governments, because those 3 orders of government are certainly very involved in issues around soil management. And land use planning is certainly a provincial jurisdiction, but we've certainly heard through this study that we need to think about how land is used across this country in order that we can ensure food security, both in the country and beyond, as we're being asked to feed the world.
For people at the retail level, people selling seed, dealing with customers specifically, communicating with the public, I know that's something that you excel in and specialize in. And how can people at the retail level, people selling seed products, really communicate this to people at the customer level? I know that can sometimes take special talent dealing with the public. And do you have any thoughts on how they can be good advocates for soil health?
I think your members and those that are selling seeds at the customer level will need to know their stuff, know the story, and why we're using certain seeds for certain areas. And so I think it'll be important for your members to keep up on things through the webinars that they're participating in today, as well as making sure that farmers, producers have the opportunity to learn, and so whether that's your members offering the leadership or offering educational courses, or whether it's making sure they're aware of courses that are out there, and so better understanding the whole picture.
Before I let you go, what sort of timeline are you looking at here for the rest of your study? When do you expect it to be completed, and where do you go from here?
Sure. I expect the study will be wrapped up at the end of the year or in early 2024. And then ultimately a report will be written over the coming weeks, months. So I can't say for sure, but I would think maybe mid 2024, we might see a report which will be unveiled and shared across the country. And it's at that point that the rubber hits the road for us to get those ideas out there to all orders of government, but also for your members to hopefully take advantage of some of the things that came out of it to move the issues of soil health forward. I know that your members and seed growers across Canada are certainly doing good things out there, right? And we need to keep that momentum and moving forward.
Yes, there is some good news as well. Technology, there's new products on the market, things that are allowing people to improve the health of their soil as well. So there's definitely some good news to be reported as well. So thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead.
So I was going to say, and we've seen that as we've traveled the country, right? So we were in Saskatchewan and Alberta, and we saw grassland agriculture, and those grasslands hadn't been tilled for years, if not forever, and the amount of carbon in the soil, the water retention. But we also saw some good things happening on the dry land agriculture in Alberta. In Saskatchewan, we went to a technology company that's developing, inventing new things to study and test the soil that you and I can use, on your members on their farms and to move the idea of soil health forward. Lots happening. It's exciting. I think the time is right to undertake this study. And 40 years after the first one, hopefully in 2024, we'll see a report that is as groundbreaking, pardon the pun, as the first one, which was done in 1984.
Yeah, looking forward to the results. Thank you, Senator Black, for your time, and have a great day.
Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you so much to Senator Black for taking the time. It was great to hear from him on that. It's an important study, and we're all looking forward to hearing what is going to come from it. Now, we're going to hear from Yamali in a moment. We had some technical trouble getting Yamali in through video, so we're going to try by phone. Will be an interesting experiment to see how it works, but so far so good. So, Yamali, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here. Just sorry for all of this internet trouble, but we live in a remote area.
Yeah, I live in a remote area as well, so I know all about internet trouble sometimes, so not a problem. Now, Yamli, as I said, has managed the Chinook Applied Research Association's crop and soil program in Alberta. Now, again, I want to thank Senator Black for his time. Yamli, welcome. We both met way back in 2018, actually, and your work is of big interest to people in the soil health realm. You speak at events, you take a huge interest in soil health. It's really your life's work, actually. And we heard from Senator Black that soil health is a concern for our Senate and for our country due to some policy related issues, including urbanization, cities expanding, etc. Yamali, from a research perspective, I was wondering if you could explain to us why this is such an important issue. You do have a slideshow as well, so when you want me to cue it up, just let me know and then I can go through the slides for you. But can you talk a little bit about, from a research perspective, why soil health is so important to the seed industry?
Yes, you can put the first slide that you have there, please.
Will do. Here we go.
Yes.
Just tell me when you want me to change the slide.
Oh, okay. So for us, it's very important that we need to look at the soil based on its functionality. And then you can see here the three circles that shows the three most important soil properties that are the biological, chemical, and physical. So when soils are healthy, plants and animals are also healthy. And if we will consume what soil produces in a healthy soil, that will mean we will get healthy food and we have a better healthy life. So that's pretty much what we look at this health of the soil. And then lately, human health researchers have been focusing on the gut microbiome and the lack of certain microorganisms that have been linked to many diseases, autism, depression, autism, to name a few of them. And when they are incorporated into our daily life, all of these microorganisms that are missing, they have been showing to fix some health issue. And most of these creatures, guess where they are? In the soil. So if we have them in the soil, they will get to us in one or another way. I had an interesting talk for you, it was last week or the week before. I was giving a talk at the Blood Tribe, and then I was kind of planting seeds in their head to how important it is to understand what soil health is. And then one of those members come to me and said, you know that our ancestors used to feed our kids with a spoon of soil from areas that were never exposed to anything. And then, that caught my attention because I told him those soils are being, having good creatures in there. And then I also share some experience that I am aware of soil health. I'm not implying that we need to start eating healthy soils. I want us to get a better understanding of what it means to have healthy soils. So, with unhealthy soil, we cannot have balanced life. Crop and livestock productivity, the food production are compromised. That is pretty much because our ecosystem is not functioning properly due to the fact that soil microbiome has been taken for granted during many generations everywhere in the world. Soil biology has been ignored, and we were not aware of their role in soil functionality. We have been farming without them, those creatures, when we should have been farming with them. I think the thing is, what's most important is that there is a general lack of understanding regarding soil health. Most of the attention has been focusing in chemical soil approach rather than considering the soil as a whole system with their interactions of the chemical, physical, and biological, like you saw here in this circles of the biological, physical properties. So soil needs to be looked at as a living system to be rejuvenated. That's how we see the soil, and that's how we need to focus on working in research, looking at the soil as a whole.
Yeah, that's crucial. You talk about the microscopic creatures in the soil, the microbiome, and that's hugely important to this. We're going to hear from James White next. James explained to me how, we've really forgotten about these microscopic creatures. We've developed, different products that are hugely useful. Fungicides and things that are designed to help plants to thrive, but we have maybe forgotten about these microscopic creatures and how useful they are and how fundamental they are to soil health. And it turns out, according to James, that plants don't thrive in spite of these microscopic creatures. They thrive because of these microscopic creatures. And so we're going to hear from James now for about 4 minutes here. He's going to explain something called, he's discovered something called the rhizology cycle, or he's researched the rhizology cycle. Rhizology means root eating. And what happens here is bacteria and fungi cycle between a free living phase in the soil and a plant dependent phase within the cells of plant roots. It's all very technical, of course, but as I say, our plants and seeds need these soil microbes in order to thrive. I asked James why good soil health is so crucial for seed development, and he had a really good explanation of this. So we're going to hear from James now. And then, Yamali, we will continue our conversation. So here's James.
Well, the seed microbes are critical for the seedling. And the mama plant, the mother plant, takes the microbes that it used and that are successful for growth in the particular habitat in the soils, the microbes that the mother plant had, and takes those microbes from the roots, moves them up to the leaves, moves them up to the ovaries and the flowers and the ovaries and the seeds that develop from that. So seeds will have microbes associated with them, and sometimes in tissues that are accessory tissues that are on seeds. For example, grasses, if you consider fescue grasses, ryegrasses, for example, there's some dry limma. It's called limmas. It's some some dried leafy material, right? Associated scale bract material associated with those seeds, tightly adhering to the surface. Well, those materials on the surface cover contain bacteria, and they're in there. They're in those tissues, and so those bacteria, when the seed germinates, those bacteria can then colonize the seed and be the first microbes, the first endophytes that the plant acquires, right? And that makes these plants able to develop properly. It makes them able to resist disease, because these bacteria on the seeds also colonize fungi, and they will cause the fungi that might be pathogenic, they will cause them to be avirulent or less virulent. They'll reduce the virulence, the non-pathogenicity, essentially. If we remove all the microbes, we have problems like damping off disease, various kinds of seedling diseases, and the seedlings don't develop properly. They won't have root hairs. The roots don't grow down properly. The roots don't grow very well. So for all those reasons, you want microbes on those seeds. All kinds of seeds do this. They'll have microbes. Now, some of the microbes are actually inside the seed, around the embryo in the seed, in that ovule, and they were endophytic in the ovary before the seed even formed in there, right? So when the seed forms, they're in that tissue associated with the little embryo in the seed. And so when that seed germinates, the bacteria, the microbes, can come out of the seed with the ovary and colonize those root tips. And the root tips are typically the first thing that comes out of the seed. And when they come out, if they have a good collection of microbes, then that's great, because that's where those microbes go, right there at that root tip. And then once that, okay, so that gives the early start for the seed, right? And if you have a good, healthy, microbial rich soil, the root can go into the soil and they can start attracting these other microbes in the soil, getting those. And of course, those are the fresh, those are bringing nutrients into the plant. Those are the fresh microbes bringing fresh nutrients. And so they go to the exudates and they go to the tip, and then they're internalized, and then the plant starts to extract nutrients from them using reactive oxygen.
Thank you to James for that. So, in other words, microbes in soil and on seed are a huge factor in determining plant health. Of course, we have to allow these microbes to thrive. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of modern practices like applying fungicides can actually have a negative effect on this and can kill off some of these beneficial microbes, according to James. I'm going to play one more clip from James before I continue my chat with Yamali. He's going to talk a little bit about how we need to think about soil health in a new way to allow some of these microbes to thrive. Here's James again.
A lot of our fungicidal chemistry is not necessary if we have a good bacterial microbiome on plants and in soils. In fact, we think from experiments we've done in the lab, we think we can control most diseases, many diseases at least, using bacteria, naturally occurring bacteria that naturally occur in the soil and in plants, that we can control them using these bacteria. They don't kill the fungi, by the way. They instead, what these bacteria do is they colonize the fungi externally and internally, and then they change the behavior of the fungus. They will make the fungi less virulent. The fungi will grow slower. We'll see less sporulation, less fruiting, less spores forming by the fungi. They'll colonize the plant, but they don't hurt the plant. It's an interesting phenomenon. So any disease, any fungal disease that has two stages, if it has a saprophytic phase, like Fusarium is like this, you can grow as a saprophyte in the soil, but it can also grow as a pathogen. What we find is that if the bacteria are there, that shifts the phase of development towards this more saprophytic phase, with the bacteria there. And what we think is actually happening is that fungi are very similar to plants in that they will absorb bacteria and they'll get nutrients from them, like, for example, nitrogen, like most of the mushrooms that you're aware of, that people grow in mushroom farms or wild in nature. Now, I can't tell you what about the mushroom farms, what's happened to their microbes, but if we look at the equivalents and we go to the wild versions of those fungi, we can look in the hyphae, and there we can see bacteria in those hyphae using our histochemical stains for detecting nitrate and nitrogen forms. We can see that around those bacteria inside the fungi, there actually is nitrogen accumulating. So what we think is happening is that if the fungi are able to get the bacteria that they need, just like plants need these bacteria too, if they get those bacteria, then they don't become aggressive and pathogenic on plants to get the nutrients. It's only when they don't have those microbes that some of these fungi like Fusarium then attack plants and get the nutrients that they need, because they can't get it out of the fungi. So it's a healthy soil has an effect of modulating disease, but also enabling plants to get the nutrients that they need by absorbing microbes, and those microbes then going out into the soil and getting nutrients that they could carry back to the plant. It's a very different system than we initially thought, than we have thought for a long time in plants. This is why we can hydroponic, because we think that we don't need the soil. We can do this without soil and just grow these plants hydroponically. But of course, all those microbes are out there in the soil, And when we feed them just the chemistry, nutrients, they miss some important pieces. Now, I mean, we can still eat the plants grown hydroponically, but they're not as microbial rich, and they don't have access to the soil microbes and the soil nutrients and that's important for the plants, because this is how plants work. They work by growing in soil and absorbing the soil microbes. That's natural condition for plants. It's not in systems free of microbes.
Now, Yamali, I'm curious to follow up on what James said. What has your research uncovered, Yamali, in a nutshell, in terms of how we can improve soil health?
So you can put the next slide. I can start
Yep.
looking into that. Okay. So initially, in order for us to have a better understanding of what the soil constraints were, we started this initiative, which is help us to look at the soil in a different way. And that's why we're incorporating assessing the biological and physical components of the soil. And with this in mind, you put the next slide, allow us to see what are the really constraints that we have. And that's why it's important that regardless of what protocols or laboratory we look for evaluating the soil health conditions, we need to find a way to evaluate it or assess it with most of the indicators that are going to tell us what the health of the soil is. How you can see here, there are different components in the biological, the chemical, and physical properties of the soil, would allow us to get an indication how the soil is. So what we did with this was to do some evaluation of the soil as a benchmark through the province. You can put the next slide, please. And then that allow us to see what were the major constraints that we have in the soil. And then put the next one, please. And then allow us to see, in a broad area through the province, what was the constraint. And one of the major constraints that we found was a compaction in the physical component, compaction as also poor soil weight aggregation and stability. And then that is very important for us to know what is that issue that we have in the soil, for us then to see what will be the approach that we need to. So you can go to the next slide, and then here is a part of the whole evaluation that we did as a part of a benchmark in the last 3-4 years that allow us to see what the major constraints are, and that's what we need to start focus on, as I mentioned before. So that is one of the things that is very important for us to get what the issues are. And then we find out, physical and biological and chemical constraints, but we need to start working in a way for healing the soil with that information. That's why it's important, that information, because allow us to see where are the constraints and where we can start healing the soil. One really, you can go to the next slide. I just want to show one of our findings that has been, calling our attention, and in more than one time, is when we look at the soil in a way that we can manage it, applying the soil health principle, like the one you see there, keep the soil cover, minimize soil disturbance, plant diversity, and also, continue that root system on the ground. And if we can put an animal integration, would also help. But what I want to share right now is the experience that we have and how the soil can change when you have some changes in management, even for a short period of time. This what I'm going to show was taken in July 23, 2020. And the picture was taken on October. It's just about probably 2 months and 10 days. But you can see in the next slide, you can see how changes of the soil are like as you can see here. It's just for you to see the two sides, it's one area but side by side where you can see the cocktail cover crop to your right, and to the left it's a bare soil that was standing bare just for that period of time. You can show the next slide, please. And then this is how the bare soil look like. Nothing was planted after harvesting that piece at that time. Look very close to this. Next slide. You can see how the soil is still, how, or even a little bit of some runoff of the soil, a little erosion there you can see. But when you look at the next slide, you will see how the soil in the surface of that area that only has 2 months and 10 days, how has been changing. So that's the first thing that we saw. And then it's amazing how to see the soil is able to change that surface, but not only the surface of that. Look at the next slide, and you can see how the roots were there. All of the things that you see next to the rhizospores of the root, it is aggregate formation. That is the first stage for us to look at the soil, healing the process only by disturbing, let's say in a way, disturbing the soil with roots. We are disturbing the soil using the root, which is feeding the microbes in the soil, and the microbes wake up and then start doing their job, like you can see there. And then you can show the next slide, and then you will see that it's the same pattern. No matter what plant I pull it out, the roots were loaded on microorganisms there. And then the next one shows the comparison between both of them. So this is one of the ways that we are looking at the soil in order for us to see what the changes are. And then this is one of the first steps that we need to look at. And so in order to do that, it's very important that producers or everyone being able to start engaging in something that we started in this part of the world, which is the MASH movement, Management Alternative for Soil Health, where, first you do your benchmark, prior to do any changes or management in your soil, and then you start monitoring this. And then you can do it in farm with things that we can, teach producers to do, or you can send your sample to the lab. And then after you have done a management, if it works, then you continue monitoring it. And then it doesn't work, you change it and you adjust it. And then you continue monitoring this. So that's the part that is very important for observation and what the producers are doing, especially right now that everyone is engaging, the agriculture renovations and doing all of this. We need to start monitoring the soil. We need to benchmark the soil, and that's what's important. We did in Alberta, the soil health benchmark.
Wow. Yeah. Those.
Yeah, my advice.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that if in this process, if we see that our constraint is physical, I will recommend for us to start unlocking the physical constraint, and then the biology is going to come and take over, like that little mechanical disturbance or that disturbance as roots, like you saw it there.
Wow, yeah, I'm struck by how dramatic those photos are, and the comparison photos, how different it was, and it really speaks to how healthy soil can really help plants to thrive, and you can actually see it looking at the roots, and it's quite amazing.
Yes, and that is very important. And the other thing is, this is just the beginning. And then if producers are able to start looking at this and then paying attention and monitoring, because there is no formula, honestly. If someone comes and tell, oh, do this and this and this, no, every soil is unique. Every soil has their own biosignature. Every soil has the characteristic of doing this in a way that allows them to continue the process. And to me, honestly, the most important part of this is that what you saw in that root, the aggregation formation. And what is next is the stabilization of those aggregates. When those aggregates are stable, that's when we can talk about carbon sequestration. If you don't have an aggregate that is stable, the carbon sequestration means nothing. So that's why it's important that we look at the soil well structured by that stable aggregate. To me, the link of soil aggregate stabilization to sequester more carbon in our soil is the microbiome. If we don't achieve that soil aggregate stabilization, we won't have healthy soil and no carbon sequestration and no healthy life. And it's a cycle that continues doing, and then, so that is one of the things that I think we need to focus on. And then talking about microbes in the soil, well, I have been enjoying life below ground like nobody before. I am pretty sure about that. I wish everyone could engage in looking at their soil so they can see what I see. If we have time, I have a video that I can, the next one is a video where I capture a rotifer getting into cryptobiasis stage. And that's what that means. To me, initially I thought, those soils around here are dead because of, that. But they are not. They are dormant. They are there in a way that needs our attention. They are a way that needs us to start looking at them in a different way.
Yeah, I love how passionate you are, Emily, and what we'll do is I'm going to put a link to those videos when we publish the article online that everybody who registered today will get a copy of. And what we're going to do now is hear quickly from Trevor Blua. I did a great chat with Trevor the other day. It's about 8 minutes long. He's going to talk a little bit about soil health and disease, and then we'll take a couple of audience questions before we wrap up. So here is Trevor, and then we will continue our conversation for a few more minutes before we sign off for the day.
Thank you.
Can you get us started off here, Trevor, by explaining the relationship between soil health and the susceptibility of seeds to seed-borne diseases specifically?
Certainly, yeah. So when we're talking about plant diseases, one of the things that we always consider and think about is the disease triangle, and this is something that is very important, and it impacts our recommendations on management tools and predictions on how bad disease will be. And so the disease triangle says that the interactions between your host plant, the pathogen itself, and the environment will determine the overall severity of disease. And soil health fits into that environment category, right? And so it's a whole third of the triangle that can determine the outcome of disease severity on a host plant.
Now, Trevor, when it comes to seed diseases specifically, are there some key indicators that seed growers, farmers in general should monitor in order to prevent seed disease when possible? Like, obviously this is something that you see crop up in the lab, but in terms of prevention, like we even do with disease in human beings, right? It's preferable to have prevention first before it becomes a problem. Are there some key indicators that people can watch out for in this regard?
Yes. So with the seed-borne diseases, the major impact that you're going to be seeing is seedling blight and root rots, right? From having those pathogens present in the seed. So a big part about the impact on how much disease you're going to be seeing as a result of the seed-borne side of it is going to be the moisture that's present, right? So most of those pathogens like wet conditions, right? So if you're seeding into wetter soils, you're going to be seeing a lot more seedling blights and root rots. And likewise, later on in the growing season, if you've got a lot of wet conditions throughout larger parts of the field, it's going to be a bigger impact for root rots, right? And so for these pathogens, then it's really important to have good soil drainage, right? Because if you have a lot of sitting water in the field, then you're just going to be seeing a lot more disease. So that's a major part of it, is the drainage within a field. Some other things that you want to look at is the overall soil organic matter, because having a healthy soil microbiome helps to decompose your previous crop stubbles, and even the roots that would be present underground, where those pathogens would be surviving from previous years. And so having the decomposition and the turnover of those pathogens that are present is important in preventing those diseases from persisting in the soil over time.
Yeah, speaking of persisting in the soil, I understand some of these diseases can literally live in this soil for years. Like it's crazy how long some of them can actually be present there for. Can you share some insights in regards to that? I mean, what impact does soil health have on the development and persistence of some of these pathogens that cause seed disease?
Yes, so different pathogens have different long-lived survival structures. Like Aphanomyces have oospores, right, with thicker walls. Some Fusarium species form chlamydospores, which have thicker spores as well. And so, they're able to survive for years. But if you've got, healthy soil with a diverse microbiome that is able to decompose a lot of that plant material that contains those pathogens more rapidly, then you're going to be seeing a quicker decomposition, like quicker death of those long-lived spores than you would with something that's not as diverse, right? And so that's why crop rotation is such an important part of the management tools that we use in reducing the severity of disease for crops.
Now, this is part of our retail strategy series, and I want to give retailers, people who sell seed, some insights into how they can help out in this regard. And I'm curious how, in your opinion, retailers, people selling seed products, can help educate their customers about the importance of soil health and its relationship to diseases. Specifically, what role can retailers play in this, specifically with maybe helping connect people who sell seed with experts and resources, people like you, for example, on soil health and that connection to disease? Can you talk about a little bit about the proactive role that seed sellers and others in the industry can play in this?
Sure. Yeah, it just starts with talking about it. Like having these sorts of webinars are really key with educating growers and keeping it top of mind as well, and learning about new things. It's really important to keep on talking about it. We've got some seed cleaning plant meetings coming up that we're going out to talk directly to growers, and that's a really important step to keep people thinking about all these important things that they can do throughout the year.
What's that number one thing that you're seeing now that you kind of want to get out there, that hey, this might be an issue possibly for 2024?
There's a couple things that I'm hearing now. We're seeing in the seed testing that the seed-borne Fusarium graminearum in cereals is actually a lot higher than we expected around the central Alberta region, kind of especially to the northwest of Edmonton, but even going east to the Saskatchewan border as well. We're seeing more Fusarium graminearum that we expected, considering it was kind of a drier year. Southern Alberta is not too much this year, but we've had a few samples with very high levels of Fusarium graminearum. So it seems like it's not as common down there, but in some places it seems like it's really regional and can be patchy this year. So it's very important to get cereal seed tested still for Fusarium graminearum. Another thing that we're hearing is that it seems like with growers going out there harvesting, they're seeing some signs of verticillium stripe in their canola. And this is something that does become more apparent later on in the it's easier to diagnose later into harvest. So they might not have recognized it earlier on, but it seems like they're seeing more of that. This is a disease that can be a bigger issue in drier years, so that kind of makes sense. It is a pathogen that can be soil borne. So if it does turn out to be a bigger cause of disease this year, then it will be more important to stick to those longer rotations for future years, just to prevent it from being a problem in the future.
And thank you so much, Trevor, for that. We actually have Trevor with us. So, hi, Trevor. How are you?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thanks a lot for that. And we still have Yamli on the phone as well. We're just going to take a couple of questions here. Trevor, I had a question with regards to the microbiome and technology. And I know this is something you work with every day, Trevor. And is there any technology on the horizon or anything like that that can maybe help to identify microbes in soil, microbes that are potentially harmful to seed or even beneficial microbes? And Trevor, can you speculate on that a bit? Like, even if you have to look into your, science fiction crystal ball, that maybe there's something coming down the pipe that might actually help us to better identify these sorts of things.
Yeah, so right now we're really focused on, looking for specific, mostly pathogens, right? We have tests specifically for, say, like Fusarium graminearum in cereals, right? That's the biggest one that we do here at our lab. And same thing with soils as well, clubroot and Aphanomyces. We're really focused directly on testing for those pathogens. There's newer technologies that are becoming more common involving sequencing, where you can sequence the DNA of everything that would be present in a sample, and identify everything that could be there, bacterial, fungal, everything. And so this is kind of an emerging technology that could potentially be more common in the future. That is something that's in the future, though, for now.
Yeah, oh, for sure, for sure. These things don't happen overnight. I had a question, Yamli, with regards to different plants needing different types of soils, and does that affect how we look at soil health? And then there was a related question actually regarding canola, about how canola benefits from certain microbes that are specific to canola. Can you comment a little bit about that, Yamali? Like, if different plants require different types of soil, and then how does that kind of impact how researchers like you think about these things?
Well, some plants, they will behave, let's say, in a way better when they have certain biology. And then what's happening is that we have the soil with certain characteristics that have, when you plant it, they don't have those balance of minerals, so the right microbes that will be able to feed that specific plant. And that probably could be something that we already are working on and it has certain ratios of bacteria and fungi. That's what the common is. That depending on what shift are you are more bacteria dominant. You have certain kind of more specific plants. But the thing is that for us to break that or make the soil to be more in better state for any crop that you put there is to make the soil healthy, having a biodiversity of microorganisms that allow any kind of crop that you put there to have the conditions for the roots to get the nutrients and those microbes that will help to improve the conditions of the soil for that plant to do better, regardless of what type of plant is. What I'm trying to say is, with a healthy soil, it doesn't matter what kind of crop you put it there, because the crop is going to be to this potential, because it's going to have available nutrients, it's going to have the diversity of those microbes that are going to interact with that specific root and give whatever the plants needed, or the plant sends some signal, the microbe is going to be there to help the whole system.
Yeah,
that's how I see it. And then important is, that biodiversity, that at some point we can put it in the soil to condition the soil for the next crop. So that's what is important, a good rotation and management that incorporate all of this biodiversity above and below ground.
Yeah, exactly. Soil's that foundation that if you improve that soil health, doesn't matter what plant you're planting there, that it will theoretically benefit. And no, I'm looking forward to sending this webinar. As I said, it's being recorded. I'm looking forward to sending it to Senator Black so he can incorporate some of these things into his final study results, which we will all be hearing about soon. So thank you so much for that, Yamali. And thank you for your insights today, Trevor. I'd like to thank Senator Black and James White as well. That's actually all the time we have today for our webinar. As I said, a recording of this webinar will be available in the next 48 hours. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors again, 2020 Seed Labs and CCAN, for their support. I want to thank all our audience members for spending their lunch hour with us. I hope everybody has a great day. And this is Mark Zinkowitz, editor of Seed World Canada, signing off.